Sabrina, let's kick things off just as we do every time before. We're going to play a game of Would You Rather.
Okay.
We are going to pick 2 shocking moments from today's story and see which seems like the lesser of 2 evils.
Okay.
And today we are covering the story of Zona Heaster Shue, also known as the Greenbrier ghost.
Which is honestly one of our all-time favorite cases.
Yes, we have brought her
To
up
ever
for like
discuss.
8 years.
Truly 8 years, because we covered it very early days of Two Girls, One Ghost. But okay, here are the choices for today. If you were murdered and became a ghost, would you rather haunt your killer and get some revenge, or haunt your loved one in her sleep to help solve the crime?
Easy. I would haunt my murderer. I'm a vengeful little bitch. I like
You are.
Watched the movie 7 Psychopaths and I was like, yes, I dream of the day. Well, I don't dream of the day that I have to.
I hope that you're
someone
never
near
in that,
me
yeah.
dies where I have to do that. But
Yeah.
I took notes and I would bring that into the spectral world with me and haunt that person till their end and then every life after that.
I want to do both. But I think I would haunt my loved one so that I could help solve the crime
And give them peace.
and make the person who committed the act be punished. And
I guess
that's
that's true.
haunting them for the rest of their lives. They have to live with the fact that they killed me.
Some people.
And the world is miserable without me. Snaps for that.
Preach.
But Zona Heaster Shue, she decided to haunt her mother, Mary Jane, and together they brought the man who killed her to justice.
And in the end, Zona helped solve her own murder and she got a little revenge in the process.
Right, both.
Just like what you were saying.
Welcome to Crimes of the Paranormal, a Crimehouse original powered by Pave Studios. We're your hosts, Sabrina Deana-Roga and Corinne Vien.
Every Tuesday, we're exploring a different corner of the true crime universe, examining cases that left a permanent impact on society. This season, we are diving into cases where the evidence doesn't end in bloodstains and fingerprints, but it drifts into the unexplainable, into the unknown.
Ooh.
So make sure to hit the subscribe button to join our community so you never miss an episode.
Today, we're talking about the murder of Zona Heaster Shue. And in 1897, Zona became famous for solving her own murder from beyond the grave.
So let's unbury the truth. A warning before we begin. This episode contains descriptions of murder.
We truly love this case, and we're going to spend a large chunk of this episode talking about Zona Heaster Shue's ghost. But up front, we do want to acknowledge that while this is an extraordinary story, Zona's life was taken far too soon. She was killed at the age of only 26 with so much life ahead of her.
Yeah, and despite her young age, the coroner believed that she died of heart disease. But Zona's mother, Mary Jane, did not believe that for a second.
See, mommies.
She believed her daughter was murdered. And after her daughter's death, her suspicions were confirmed by Zona herself.
Okay, before we get into the dirty little details, let's talk about ghosts, why don't we? Because we love talking about ghosts.
We do. Surprise, surprise.
We have lots of thoughts, the biggest one being, we love them.
Yeah, and we believe in them, and they are real.
And if you don't believe, I have thoughts about you, but you know what? I'll keep them to myself, and you keep your thought about ghosts not being real to yourself.
Sabrina's going to fight you.
When I'm a ghost, I will haunt you.
Yeah. Well, we believe so much. I mean, we have to believe because we grew up in haunted homes.
That's true.
But beyond that, we believe so wholeheartedly in our ability to make contact when we do pass over that you and I have a secret code word as like our message to one another for when one of us passes before the other.
We can't share it with anyone because then
Unless
it won't
we
be
perish
secret.
together.
Oh, yes.
The ultimate
My dream.
Okay, so whether or not you believe in the paranormal, we hope you do. The case of Zona Heaster Shue, or the Greenbrier ghost, is so fascinating. So either her ghost really did visit her mother,
or it was nothing more than an excuse to get the prosecutor to take a look at the case. But one thing was for sure.
Zona Heaster Shue was murdered. It's just past noon on January 23rd, 1897. An 11-year-old errand boy named Andy Jones trudges up a lonely West Virginia hill, his boots crunching through the remnants of old snow. The winter light is thin, colorless, bleaching the limestone cliffs to a ghostly white. His breath fogs the air, curling into soft, fleeting clouds. He's tired after a long morning spent sweeping ashes and hauling soot for the town doctor. He's exhausted, and he's so ready to go home. But he has one last errand before he can head home for lunch. Edward Shue, the blacksmith, had asked Andy to check on his wife Zona for him. He said that she had been feeling poor lately. And Andy knew that he could not argue with Edward. Despite Edward being new to town, Andy could tell that there was something cold about him, something that made Andy's stomach tighten. Edward Shue was strict. He was very controlling. But this was a job, and Andy kept his thoughts to himself. So Andy crosses town. He's walking to the Shue home, and he stops at the chicken coop and slips inside the small wooden building. It's quiet inside, and he checks under the hens, but there are no eggs today. He smiles. Maybe he'll get to go home earlier than he thought. So now he pops inside the house. The door creaks behind him as he pushes it open, and he calls out softly, "Mrs. Shue?" But there's no answer. He takes a few tentative steps, his eyes adjusting to the dim light, and that is when he sees her. Zona Heaster Shue is lying at the bottom of the stairs. Her body is perfectly straight, rigid. Her eyes are wide open, staring towards the ceiling. And Andy's breath catches before he rushes to Zona's side, reaching to help her. And that is when he feels her icy, clammy hands, and he pulls his back. He then turns, he runs out of the house, screaming for his mother, screaming for his mommy.
He truly ran for his mother, whose name was Martha, and Martha is shocked to hear her son's story. So she takes her son, Andy's hand, and basically leads him into town to go find Zona's husband, Edward Shue. And now Edward is new to the area and has only been married to Zona for 3 months. He arrived in Greenbrier, West Virginia in 1895, only a few months before the marriage, looking for work as a blacksmith. And as we alluded to earlier, Andy didn't really seem to like Edward, but as far as we know, there was no other reason to dislike him. Edward was a blacksmith, seemingly normal dude.
Yeah, but if an 11-year-old boy is being like, that guy is weird and gives bad vibes and seems scary, let me go check on the chickens before I even have to enter this house, like, that is
totally but
the answer.
But he is also not telling anyone this, and that's also
right.
It's so easy to form an opinion after the fact. But at this time, he seems like a normal guy, so of course Martha wants to go to him. Martha and Andy go find Edward, and when they tell him what happened, Edward erupts in anger and heartbreak, and he sprints towards his house. Like, before Martha can even finish what she was saying, he sprints up the hill to his wife. Martha and Andy follow him, racing back to the Shue home, and they find Edward tearfully cradling Zona's body in his arms. When Andy and Martha get there, Edward shouts at Andy to go get the town doctor. So Andy does, and he runs to find Dr. George Knapp, who has an office just a few hundred yards from the blacksmith. By the time the doctor shows up, it is too late to help. And to be clear, it seems like it was too late prior to this, that Zona had been dead and was likely dead when Andy discovered her body.
Yes. And so they're waiting for the doctor. And while waiting for the doctor, Edward does something strange. He decides to put his now lifeless wife in her Sunday best, a long dress with a very high collar. And then he adds a detail that, depending on the record, it is a little bit different. Some records say it was a thick scarf, others say a bow, but either way, a long dress and then something tied around her neck. And if this doesn't seem odd to you, it should.
Plus, when Dr. Knapp does finally arrive to examine Zona's body, Edward is basically all over Zona's body, making it impossible for the doctor to do a full examination of her.
Right. And like at the time, the doctor didn't think too much of it because he was like, this is a grieving husband. You know, he's heartbroken. He's distraught. He can't let go of his wife despite taking the time to fully dress her corpse, which is weird.
Yep.
So Dr. Knapp was touched by the scene, right? He was like, oh, wow, this poor man, they'd only been married for a few months and now he's grieving his new wife. Like, this is unimaginable. This is terrible. So when Edward keeps getting more emotional and more hysterical, especially as Dr. Knapp is like reaching out, trying to examine Zona's neck, he doesn't think much of it. He makes the examination really quick. And then he's like, I'll skedaddle.
There's so many things that are so sus about this, but the most sus is that Dr. Knapp does see bruising around her neck, but because Edward is basically like all over her and preventing him, he just like is like, whatever, don't get a close look.
Not my business.
And it's very frustrating. But like because how could you see bruising and just be like, oh, whatever. And
yeah, cause of death, heart attack.
But I guess the only thing I can use to reason this is that Dr. Knapp had been seeing Zona for a couple of weeks prior to this for her troubles that she'd been having. So he figures that her death came from complications. In his notes, he wrote that Zona Heaster Shue died of, and this is in quotes, an everlasting faint. Which I had to look it up.
I want that to be my cause of death.
It is so...
It's whimsical.
It's like
it's girly.
Well, okay, so I was looking it up because I was like, what does this even mean and how often was it used? It is a term that does come up a little bit in literature specifically from 1820s to 1890s, and it basically means dying from a faint that never ended, which is very romantic way to speak about and write about death.
So basically they collapsed and died.
An everlasting faint.
An everlasting faint.
But it was also a term used for cardiac arrest or just like a blanket terminology for unknown cause of death, but just in a more eloquent way.
Yeah. Well, it was the late 1800s.
I wrote, a fancy way for doctors to say, IDK Becky, she died. She's a woman. This also leaned into feminine problems, feminine issues, which even today I feel like there's a lot of medical conditions that are just like, oh, that's women problems.
It's dismissed.
So that has existed for a long time. But yes, it is a very romantic Victorian way to speak of death.
But in this story, just saying that it was an everlasting faint is kind of lazy.
Very.
Because we read that in the town of Greenbrier, they had a tradition for women of the town to wash and dress the woman's body who has perished to prepare her for burial, which is this really beautiful thing. That's of like so all beautiful. The women coming together to like send off one of their sisters, basically. But Edward refused to allow this. He would not let anyone near her body. No one could touch his wife. He dressed her in that high-necked outfit and he was like, okay, that's it. Let's bury her. Get her in the ground quick. Which I will say, in his defense, at this very moment, they were new to town. So I can see being like...
He was new to town. She was not.
Well, no one got to say because he was the husband. But like I can imagine from his perspective coming in and being like, this is a weird ritual. I'm really overwhelmed by all of this. This was like my new wife. Don't take her from me and like strip her down and wash her and like just don't like...
Yes.
I already prepared her.
The emphasis here being, and I think the reason no one was looking at this for a really long time is that they just thought Edward was a really heartbroken, devastated husband.
Right, because they were newlyweds still.
But we have the ability to tell the story now after the fact where all of these things added up are red flags.
Yes. And in the moment, there were bigger issues to deal with, so no one put up too much of a fight about not being able to carry out this tradition in the town because someone needed to contact Zona's family. So far, only a few townsfolk and her husband knew that she had passed away. Yeah. So two of her friends, Dick Watts and Lewis Stewart, they volunteered to go visit the Heasters and break the news. They lived on the other side of the county, about 15 miles away, which at this time it was no easy trip. So they went on horseback. It took probably around like 2 to 3 hours to get to the Heasters' home just to deliver this news. Yeah. And at that point, it was nearly dusk. And Zona's father, Jacob, is out of the house. So it's just Zona's mother, Mary Jane. And she welcomes these men inside, familiar men, her daughter's friends. And she's excited to have them. She's like, oh my gosh, boys, what's going on? Dating anyone? But that excitement, it quickly is replaced by dread as she notices that these guys are so solemn. They look just terrible. So they break the news to Mary Jane, and she is distraught.
Yeah.
But she doesn't fall into a puddle of tears. No. Her motherly instincts kick in, and she immediately demands to see her daughter right away. And the men are like, you can't do that. They're holding her back. She's fighting. It's too late. It's too cold. You can't see her right now. But we promise you that in the morning, the townspeople will gather. We will bring Zona to you in the morning. So Mary Jane has to wait all night to see her daughter. And this is just gutting.
Right. Because it's also, there's like so many different factors here where it's like, you almost don't want to believe it. And not being able to see her daughter's body, she's probably like, this can't be real. And then too, it's her daughter. She just...
Right.
Yeah.
But as we will know, like, we don't know her perceptions of her daughter's relationship.
We do.
But we do.
So she spends the night thinking of her daughter, and Zona is her only daughter. Mary Jane gave birth to Zona in 1873, and she spends the night recalling the first cries, like holding her newborn baby girl, Zona, for the very first time. She remembers looking her in the eyes and giving her the name Elva Zona Heaster. Zona. Zona was this like beautiful, lively young girl, one of 8 children, but Mary Jane's only daughter. So the two of them had a very special bond. And Mary Jane always pictured really big things for her daughter, of course. Mm-hmm. So how could she be dead? It didn't feel right. It didn't feel possible. Mary Jane had just seen her daughter a mere 3 months ago for her wedding, and she was perfectly healthy.
Right? She's young. She just got married. She's still in the same town. Like, she's close to home. This feels safe.
Yeah. So she spends the entire night playing this over in her head, wishing and praying that this is all just a very bad dream.
Mm-hmm. But when morning comes, Zona's body arrives in a plain coffin, and Mary Jane is forced to reckon with the reality that, yes, there before her is her precious daughter, dead.
Yeah.
And so the family holds awake at the house. People bring food. They gather around. They share memories of Zona. And Zona's husband, Edward, stays right next to the coffin the entire time. He's almost like standing guard. It's very possessive. And after hearing a visitor remark about the scarf that Zona is wearing, he insists, oh, it's her favorite. She insisted that she be buried in this.
Which is also weird because, like, why was Zona saying, when I die, bury
she's
me
26.
in this scarf?
They just got married. Why is the conversation about death?
Yeah.
It wouldn't be.
Although I have said, bury me in my overalls to everyone, so...
But, you know, it wasn't like a true pronouncement.
True,
or was
yeah.
it? I don't know.
I think it was pretty real.
I would shoot you off into space in your overalls.
Thank you so much. So alarm bells are going off in Mary Jane's head because she has never liked Edward. Mm-hmm. And her daughter, like we said, was perfectly healthy 3 months ago. So something, to Mary Jane, she's like, something is wrong. Mary Jane never liked Edward. And let's talk about Edward a little bit. Edward's name is Erasmus Stribbling Trout Shue, which, granted, that's a name, but for me, I'm like, one thing to be sus about.
Collectively together, they've got really fascinating names.
I don't know necessarily that Mary Jane was given pause by this, but it gave me pause. But Mary Jane does recall her very first impression of Edward. He had rolled into town around October of 1896, shortly after the previous blacksmith had passed away. Edward came into town. He tells everyone he's 29 years old and that he is a blacksmith who's looking for work. What perfect timing. The blacksmith just died. I do think he probably read about it or something.
I know. I was just thinking, like, how odd to, like, how do you get word of a job opening back then? And you just float into a new town and you're like, oh, I'll just exist here and start my entire life with, like, very little contact. You can't just, like, Instagram direct message your friends and FaceTime your family when you're homesick.
And, like, word of mouth takes a lot longer to travel. Anyway, he found out about it. He arrives into town. And Zona's father, Jacob, had an axe that had gotten dull. So he was like, let's go see about this new blacksmith and let's see what he's able to do.
Yeah. Strong boy, big muscles. Let's see.
And Jacob brings his daughter, Zona. So this is the first time Zona ever lays eyes on Edward, and instantly there is a connection between the two of them. And it changed the course of their lives forever.
When Edward finished with the axe, Zona took it back to her father, and she came back to the shop later on, just as he was about to close up. Very meet cute sort of way to spark up some extra romance. And the two of them got to talking. And this kind of became a more commonplace thing for them. Zona would visit Edward at work. The two of them would spend hours talking as he worked. And time flew by as they got to know each other.
Yeah.
Zona told him about her favorite flowers, the pine lilies that grow there in the spring. She promised to show Edward sometime. And soon, a passionate whirlwind romance blossomed, and Edward proposed to Zona just 3 weeks later.
Which I don't think is uncommon back then. I feel like people move pretty quickly.
Yeah.
I
definitely know some like 80, 90-year-olds who have stories just like this.
Exactly.
My own grandparents, they got together because my grandma had a crush on my grandpa and pretended she didn't have a ride to the company holiday party and asked him for a ride.
Grandma. Smooth moves.
She was a cougar too. 2 years older.
Love her.
I know. Judy.
But okay, when Mary Jane, Zona's mother, heard of the proposal, she got worried. Like, her gut instinct was fear and worrisome. Mm-hmm. She wanted Zona to marry a local boy, someone from the community, someone that they had grown up with, someone that she knew.
They trust. They know the values of the family.
And by this time now, because Edward had been in town for like 3 weeks or so, there were some rumors spreading about him. One of them being that he had already been married 2 times, meaning that Zona would now be his 3rd wife.
Right. And he admitted himself that he had a son, and his son was not being raised by him, but by his grandparents. So Mary Jane, knowing all of this, hearing the rumors, and just knowing a few of the things, bits and pieces that Edward did share, she did not approve. But there was no talking Zona out of it. She was super in love. And then 3 months later, her daughter is dead.
Yeah.
So Mary Jane blames Edward for taking her daughter away. And now at the funeral, she's even more resentful of him. She basically ignores him the entire time. Edward, though, is unbelievably polite to everybody in a way that Mary Jane is like, she's clocking this. She's like, that is a fake dude. Like, he's being so performative. Yeah. This is not who he is at all. This is so strange. So at one point, Mary Jane actually finds his bed sheet in the coffin and tries to return it to him, but he won't take it, and he calls her mother and tells her to keep it. So like, ew,
my
icky. Mother.
He's trying to be loving.
Yeah,
and it's performative.
And it's so different from how he was before. So it's just so weird. So he's trying to commiserate with Mary. He's trying to connect with
like
Mary Jane.
But
Mary Jane is like, I'm not having it.
And here is where things get really, really spooky. Or they slowly get spooky. But okay, so the day after the burial, remember that sheet that you just mentioned, Mary Jane brings it home and she tries to wash it. Mm-hmm. But when she pulls it out of the laundry, somehow it's blood red. She tries to boil it, tries to wash it a second time. This sheet never turns white again.
Interesting. Spooky, if you will.
Exactly. Paranormal, supernatural. And even the townsfolk believe it's unnatural, like that it's indicating a bad omen.
Yeah.
And pretty soon, Mary Jane is not the only one with second thoughts about Edward. Shout out to Maud Dawkins, who's one of Mary Jane's neighbor. I feel like she's the original, like, little crime sleuth. She decides to go travel to a nearby courthouse to get information on Edward.
Hell yeah.
She digs up.
Also, like, the power of the women in this community anyway, just like their burial practices, like all of the, they're together in their girlhood. And so this makes sense.
With mommies.
Don't.
Okay, so
the Greenbrier mommies.
The Greenbrier mommies. That's who you all are today. So Maud digs up Edward's previous marriage license, and she finds a couple of major things. 1, according to this marriage license, remember when Edward came to town and he told everyone he's 29 years old? No. According to this marriage license, he's 35, which why lie about your age?
I know, that's so bizarre.
But there's something far worse that she finds. She finds out that Edward's previous wife, a woman named Lucy Tritt, died under mysterious circumstances. So now Maud is determined to learn more and find out about what happened and share everything she can find with Mary Jane. I feel like that's very much you and I.
Yeah.
I feel kindred spirits to Mary Jane and Maud. So they're like, okay, we've heard all these rumors about Edward. Let's get to the bottom of it. What's the truth? What's really going on? Was he really married 2 other times? And then they found out, yes, he was married at least once before to this woman, Lucy Tritt, who had died mysteriously.
Mm-hmm.
And then they find out Edward was in fact married before that too to a woman named Esty. Unfortunately, it is hard to find out more on that marriage, but Edward allegedly abandoned Esty and their child a couple years after getting married. Then he married Lucy. So all of this information makes Mary Jane even more certain Edward had something to do with her daughter's death, and she and Maud stay up discussing theories. One theory is that apparently Edward was overheard flirting with another woman days before Zona's death, which Mary Jane is like, maybe this is just Maud gossiping. Who knows? And maybe Zona really did die of natural causes. Or maybe Mary Jane's instincts were right. Edward wasn't a good man, and there was foul play involved with her daughter's death. But how could she ever know for certain? That night, a visit from beyond the grave confirms Mary Jane's suspicions.
It's late in January 1897, and the house is quiet, except for Jacob Heaster's steady snore beside his wife. The sound usually gets on Mary Jane's nerves, but tonight she welcomes it. It's a reminder that she isn't alone. For days now, sleep has not come. Mary Jane lies awake beneath the quilt, whispering prayers into the darkness, asking for answers about her daughter Zona's death. Suddenly, a strange chill presses through the blanket, sending chills down Mary Jane's spine. She pulls the blanket tighter, but it does nothing to quell the chill. It feels heavy, deliberate, almost alive. That is when she hears scratching. It's coming from the foot of the bed, like wood dragging on wood. Her breath catches, and she listens even more closely now. The cold wind rolls through the room once more, even though every window throughout the house is latched tight. Her eyes scan the room, and that is when she sees it. There, in the doorway, stands a shadowy figure, soft, translucent. It's strange, but it's also familiar. And Mary Jane is in shock. She realizes that this figure standing before her is unmistakably Zona, her daughter. She's wearing the same blue dress that Mary Jane had stitched 2 winters before for her daughter. Her skin glows pale, her eyes full of sorrow. Mary Jane's hand trembles as she reaches out for her daughter. But Zona doesn't speak. She stares, watching her mother, Mary Jane. And after what feels like many, many minutes, Zona's apparition does something Mary Jane will never forget. Zona turns her head slowly. She keeps turning it and turning it all the way around, a full 360 rotation, and Mary Jane gasps. Zona's voice comes through then, soft and hollow, and she says, "He did it, Mama. Edward killed me. He broke my neck." And with that message, Zona disappears. Whew.
Could you imagine?
Mary Jane is left stunned and in this lingering cold, but now she holds the truth.
Seeing your deceased child's spirit appear is one thing, but then the action of fully rotating. I don't care what paranormal you believe in. If you saw that, you'd be terrified.
All right, it's very exorcism.
Yes.
But I also feel like, in a way, I'm glad Zona did that, because then it feels so extreme and so different from what, as a mother, you might think about, like when dreaming about your daughter, that I feel like it's unmistakably a ghostly, a spectral visit from her daughter, and you can't just excuse it as you not liking your son-in-law, your daughter's dead, and you're having this dream. It had to have been a dream.
And at
right?
first, Mary Jane does kind of think, like, maybe that was just a weird dream, like all of my fears coming true, right? But this happens. Zona's spirit visits Mary Jane for 4 nights in a row.
Yeah.
And every visit, she reveals more of the story. She tells Mary Jane about an argument that her and Edward had right before her death. It's not clear what the fight was about, but Zona says that Edward threw her clothes outside in the dead of winter to spite her. When she went to pick them up, he attacked her. And the tale is bloody, it's terrifying, and traumatic. And at first, Mary Jane does keep it to herself, kind of like out of, one, will people even believe me? And what do I even do with this information?
Right, you're just a grieving mother. Why
Yeah.
Why else would you come up with this?
Who's going to believe me?
Well, that is exactly the question that Mary Jane was battling with for 4 days and 4 nights. But after the 4th night, she decides to tell someone.
Yes.
First, she shares her experiences with her neighbors, who unfortunately do exactly as she had thought. They reject it. They don't believe her. They basically write it off. She's a grieving mother. And then they tell her she's seeing things and that grief is getting to her. Oh, what a lovely message for someone who is grieving. Don't say that. That's rude. Now I'm in a fight with the neighbors.
Yeah.
Mary Jane understands their skepticism, though, and she's like, okay, well, I grew up hearing ghost stories from my grandmother. I never really believed my grandmother when she told me these stories, but this one feels so real. So she's kind of like battling herself too, being like, well, is it a ghost? Is it not? Like, what's happening to me? But she's like, no, this isn't just a vision. There was sound, there was sensation. I know I wasn't dreaming. She cannot put this out of her mind. And she's like, I have to get justice for my daughter, Zona. So she decides to go see the local prosecutor, John Alfred Preston, and she brings with her brother-in-law.
John listens politely, sympathetically. He nods his head along as Mary Jane tells of Zona's spirit visiting her and the fact that Edward murdered her.
Yeah.
Right away, Mary Jane can see he's like the others, that he doesn't really believe her, that she's lying, and maybe her mind is playing tricks on her. But I do appreciate this about John. He entertains it. He spends the day with Mary Jane, and then he does start to, as the day goes on, he's like, okay, well, now that you're saying a lot of these things, there is a lot that adds up that makes him feel a little suspicious
Right.
too. Mary Jane does admit that she never liked Edward and that she had basically spent all night praying, hoping that Zona would come to her and tell her the truth. But there is more than just this visitation that makes the case suspicious.
Yeah. Like his previous wife, Lily, who died young and of mysterious circumstances.
Right.
And then there's also the way that Edward acted after Zona's death. So he prevented Dr. Knapp from examining the bruising, and he also stood in the way of the local tradition of stripping her down, washing her, and dressing her again for her funeral. Then there was the bed sheet that came out blood red.
Mm-hmm.
And John is skeptical, but he decides, I'm going to look into this case more, if only to soothe Mary Jane's broken heart.
Which I'm glad that he did.
Or to cure his own curiosity a little bit.
Right. And I'm so glad that he did. So he starts by visiting Dr. Knapp, the man who basically diagnosed or stated that Zona died of an everlasting faint. And he had recently actually altered that in his notes, changing it from an everlasting faint to heart disease. An educated guess, you know. But John knows Dr. Knapp well. He's the town doctor. Everyone respects his work. And he goes to Dr. Knapp expecting this to be the end of it, putting everything to rest. But Dr. Knapp actually does say that initial examination of Zona, it was incomplete. He tells John this. So John's like, okay, well, what do we do? Why don't we complete the examination and dig up Zona's body to finally put this to bed?
Mm-hmm.
They set it up as soon as possible. But there's no morgue in town, so where do they set up this makeshift morgue?
At the schoolhouse that's next to the church where Zona was buried.
Yeah, so literally
Time for school, kids!
It's like the school bell rings, all the kids go home, and then they're like, okay, head to the cemetery, dig up Zona's body. Yeah.
Ooh.
So it's February 22nd of 1897. This is now 31 days after Zona was buried, and 3 doctors perform an autopsy on Zona. When Edward heard about this, thank goodness he heard about it too late so he couldn't prevent them from digging up her body, he runs over to the school and he sits outside, basically right next to Mary Jane, as the doctors are inside doing their work. Mary Jane and Edward sit there basically in silence, not speaking to one another. There's a sheriff there supervising them, basically ready to make an arrest. And this is a small town. People are catching word of this. Journalists show up and they're pestering Edward and Mary Jane with questions, but Edward
And they're outside,
ignores
right?
them. Yeah, they're
so
all
it's like
outside.
awkward. They're sitting on the steps, hating each other, like fuming or just
While inside,
anxious energy.
they have no idea what is happening and what's being discovered.
Yeah.
But he does make a comment. He hardly talks to the journalists, but he does say one comment that is really suspicious. He says the police wouldn't be able to prove he was the killer if she was murdered.
Okay, why do you need to say that out loud if you're not the murderer? That's such a strange statement.
Right.
Who are you trying to convince? Yourself?
Well, whether he said that or not is up for debate. It could just be like a sensational thing that newspapers wrote to sell more papers. But if he did say it, yes, very strange.
Very strange. But as they wait outside, the doctors examine Zona's body, and I can't even imagine the anxiety that her mom was feeling outside, waiting for hours and hours. But it was hours. It took hours because even though Mary Jane was adamant that her daughter's neck was broken because Zona's spirit had told her so, doctors started by checking the contents of her stomach. So, not her neck. Maybe because Zona had been sick before her death and they suspected Edward was poisoning her, but they didn't come up with anything definitive there. So next, they move up her body, they check out Zona's spine, and it doesn't take long for them to notice something.
And finally, the doctors emerge from the school and they announce to everyone who's waiting outside that Zona Heaster Shue's neck had in fact been broken between the first and second vertebrae. Her ligaments had been torn and her windpipe was crushed. This was, in fact, an act of murder. Most telling of all, there were clear fingerprints around Zona's neck.
Yeah. So Edward is arrested. Thank goodness. Finally placed under arrest by the sheriff.
Over a month later.
Yep. But Edward seems unbothered. He says that they can't possibly prove that he's the one that did it. And on the ride to the county jail, he seemed almost cheerful. And he really believed that this circumstantial evidence wasn't enough to put him away. But this guy was about to get a rude awakening.
Yeah, he was. Edward spends the next 2 months in jail while the prosecutor, John Preston, prepares for the trial and also snaps for John Preston for, even if he was trying to appease a grieving mother, for doing all of these extra steps. Because now finally, someone will get the justice they deserve. At first, Edward is in good spirits while he's in jail. He makes friends with the other inmates. He tells stories of his past marriage. Like, he is just, he doesn't understand. Yeah. He likes to brag.
Yeah.
He's super cavalier. He intends to plead not guilty and essentially dares the prosecutor to prove that he could possibly be responsible.
Which I guess, to be fair, I understand why he was kind of taking that approach, because the state did have a pretty high bar to clear in a case like this. Because the death penalty was on the table, they also had to be really careful about their arguments and make them really airtight. And it was really hard to do with circumstantial evidence and stuff like that, which is why early on, John decides not to mention Mary Jane's paranormal encounter in court. He was like, I don't want to put her on the stand or anyone on the stand and make it look ridiculous, right? Like, we got to give ourselves a chance.
Yeah.
Instead, he focuses on the autopsy results and the witness testimony about Edward's strange behavior after Zona's death. But then the rumor mill in Greenbrier starts churning. And while the tide has definitely turned in Mary Jane's direction, not everyone is so convinced that Edward is actually guilty.
One of her neighbors, Henry Gilmer, is not sure what to believe, and he doesn't dismiss Mary Jane's ghost story out of hand, but he does think something else might be going on. He tells a newspaper that Mary Jane might have broken Zona's neck herself at the wake to try and frame Edward, because she has always hated Edward.
Yeah, but how? Edward was standing guard. He was like a little guard dog.
Right.
No one could get near her, including her own mom.
And then this same man, Henry Gilmer, also starts to share that he heard rumors that Zona was trying to get an abortion from Dr. Knapp before her death, and that the procedure went wrong, and the doctor covered it up, trying to make it look like Edward broke her neck. Conspiracies.
Yeah. And also, in those conspiracies, the second one definitely seems the most unlikely. But the autopsy showed that Zona's internal organs were all in working order. So there was no evidence of an abortion, botched or otherwise.
Yeah.
But still, the town they didn't know what to think. They remained divided.
Yeah.
Which I'm like, that's crazy. You guys don't even know Edward. He's new. Take Zona's side.
I know.
But, they want it to be fair, and they don't want some person to be blamed if they didn't actually murder this woman. And so it's waffling.
Right. Especially when Mary Jane has shared with so many people about the paranormal experience.
Mm-hmm.
There is still this belief that she's mourning.
Yeah.
But finally, on June 23rd, 1897, 5 months after Zona's death, it's time for the big day. Edward's time in jail has weakened his confidence, and after being locked up for 4 months, he is more desperate now. One newspaper reported that he was even threatening suicide while he was in jail, but when he's in court, he puts on a brave face. His lawyers work overtime. They gather basically 120 people to the stand to attest to his good standing and his moral character.
That's way too many people.
Way too many people. And before the proceedings begin, they wish Edward good luck because he's gonna need it.
It's June 23rd, 1897. The courtroom is packed with West Virginians dressed in their finest clothes. The prosecutor, John Preston, gives a brief history of Edward Shue's life so far. Born in 1861, he was the fifth of 9 children, and by many accounts, he was kind of the black sheep of the family. Though he was handsome and he could be charming in adulthood, he kind of always throughout his life had this mean streak. John paces back and forth, pausing for effect before continuing. Edward's first wife, a young woman named Esty, married him in 1885. He was 24. She was around 17. The two had a child together, but their relationship only lasted a couple of years. During that time, Edward beat Esty savagely. He abused her so often that a gang of local men actually stepped in as vigilantes.
Jeez.
In the winter of 1886, they dragged Edward out to a frozen lake, broke through the ice, and threw him in while singing hymns. This was meant to sort of act as a baptism, to keep him on the straight and narrow, give him a second chance. But this baptism didn't work. John continues to tell the jury that only a year later, Edward was thrown in jail for stealing a horse from a man. He served 2 years and never saw his first wife again. After he got out, the 33-year-old married Lucy Tritt in 1894. They hadn't been together long when Edward climbed onto their roof to repair a chimney. And while he was working, he called out to his wife Lucy, asking for a glass of water. And when she came out to bring it to him, a brick fell from the roof and landed on her head. What odd timing. But perhaps it was no accident. Even people of the town believed Edward dropped that brick himself, purposefully killing his second wife. Edward was chased out of the town and left to roam West Virginia looking for work as a blacksmith, which is how he wound up in Greenbrier in 1895. And that is how he met Zona Heaster Shue, the woman he is now accused of murdering.
So because these events did happen so long ago, they are difficult to confirm, but we do know for a fact that Edward was married twice before, and yes, that his second wife, Lucy, did die in some kind of accident, but there are different variations of what actually happened. Regardless, neither of them, no version paint Edward in a positive light. And he definitely did do time for stealing a horse, which was a serious mark against him because back then a horse was like your lifeline.
That's everything.
It's your transportation. Yeah. It's a way of making a living. It's your lifeline to the world. And one of Edward's neighbors put it this way: any man who would steal a horse or a dog is automatically an SOB. And I agree.
I love this town. So after John Preston's account, Edward's lawyers, it's their turn, and they have their work cut out for them. Not only did they have to rehabilitate their client's reputation, but they also had to convince the jury that someone else could have killed his wife. Because if it's not him, then who?
They need to sew in reasonable doubt.
Right. But up to this point in the trial, no one had even tried to identify another suspect in Zona's murder. There's just no reason to believe that anyone else was in the house prior to her death, so that only leaves one man, Edward.
And I think also at this point, no police had ever investigated anyone else. They basically just arrested Edward. But there was one other person who had been at the scene prior to the doctor arriving, 11-year-old Andy Jones. And he was called to testify on the first day of the trial to explain how he found Zona's body. And maybe because of his race, Edward was hoping that he would draw suspicion and that they could basically turn the court onto Andy.
Oh, the 11-year-old child who ran screaming and crying for his mommy because he was so shocked at what he saw. Yeah. Let's look at him.
And Edward trying to like turn the blame onto an 11-year-old just says a lot more about him.
Yeah.
And luckily, the jury buys Andy's testimony. He sticks to the facts and they don't turn on Andy.
Mm-hmm. And granted, trying to blame Andy wasn't really much of a strategy to begin with.
No.
But without another viable suspect, Edward's lawyers had this uphill battle ahead. So they started calling in their character witnesses one by one.
How many was it? 121?
Just so
It's
long.
ridiculous.
Yeah, the testimony, it dragged on for hours. I'm like going like this, like I had to sit through it.
Yeah,
Ugh.
it sounds horrible.
It does sound horrible. But most of the questions were really basic ones, and the witnesses were asked like how they know Edward, and many neighbors described him as polite and reliable, but most commonly that he's a talented, hardworking blacksmith.
That's
So
all
really
they have to say about him.
nothing personal.
But then not everyone is on his side. The prosecution also has character witnesses too, who describe Edward more along the lines of the way that John Preston characterized him in his statement. Lots of people calling him arrogant, cocky, and even inappropriate after Zona's death. Several claim they heard him say his life goal, Edward's life goal, was to bury 7 wives in his lifetime.
Like, why? It's so disturbing. It's so weird.
Disturbing. And this is actually the anecdote that's the inspiration for the book we referenced a ton for our research of this episode. The book is titled The Man Who Wanted 7 Wives, The Greenbrier Ghost, and the Famous Murder Mystery of 1897, written by a novelist and historian named Katie Letcher-Lyle, who drew on interviews, court records, and newspaper accounts from this time to really bring the case to life.
Do we know that that his first wife didn't die? Because he said that he left her.
We don't know.
But if he said that he has a child who's being raised by grandparents.
We don't know, unfortunately.
It does seem like maybe this was number 3 for him instead of number 2.
Yeah.
But according to this book, multiple people tell the jury that Edward repeated this joke so often, even before Zona was murdered, which means he was repeating it after Zona was murdered too.
Ugh.
And it's hard to even say whether it was a joke at all, considering the fact that he did bury 2 or maybe 3 wives by the age of 35. And that part of the trial definitely gets a rise out of the jury, right?
After boring hours of
the
same thing. Yeah.
20 plus people being like, he's a blacksmith. Okay, great. Thanks. Anything new? But ultimately, this is a short-lived moment of excitement.
Because entire days are devoted to nonstop character witnesses. Eventually, the jury and the judge even starts to get so bored that they're like, this is miserable.
Yeah. Let's convict him and move on.
Right. Well, and also their minds are also elsewhere because this is a small town. So everyone kind of knows that Mary Jane was visited by Zona's ghost. And that's what they really want to hear.
Right. Get to the juice of the trial.
So finally, they, after days of character witnesses, they perk up because guess who's called to the stand? Mary Jane. But the prosecutor, John Preston, disappoints them once again because he does not mention the ghost a single time. Because again, they want to leave the paranormal out of it to really, truly nail Edward for the murder. Instead, he asks Mary to describe Edward's odd protective behavior at the wake. And she does mention the mysterious red bedsheet, but that's the only hint of paranormal she gives.
Until it's the defense's turn to cross-examine her. So they know about Mary Jane's ghost story. They know that John Preston has not been bringing it up because he doesn't want this to be like a spectacle and to ruin any reputable information that Mary Jane has put forth. Yep. But if the judge will allow it, they're certainly going to try to talk about Mary Jane's spectral visit from her daughter.
Yes.
So they're expecting her to backpedal or to downplay her experience, probably like at the advisement of John Preston. And that's exactly what doesn't happen.
Because they do not know Mary Jane Heaster at all. She doesn't hesitate. She doesn't downplay it. she looks at the jury and she informs them all about Zona's spirit.
Yeah, and she tells the story well. And the defense tries everything they can do to undermine her tale. They ask her question after question. They are trying to trip her up, trying to make her change a detail of her story. They want to cast her as confused, this delusional old woman. But by the time she's finished speaking, the jury is totally spellbound. And once again, the defense's strategy totally backfired.
In the end, they have one last shot. Edward Shue himself decides to testify.
Boo. That's what I imagine the jury is doing.
Or
maybe the crowd, maybe not the jury.
The whole crowd, everyone.
Everyone.
In their heads, everyone is saying boo. And according to, I guess, standard practice at the time, Edward is put on the stand last. And though he knows things aren't looking good for him, Edward is like, one thing I know about myself is I'm a smooth talker. I'm great at charming people. Right. I've got that. So he's usually been able to talk his way out of trouble in the past. But today, his usual charm, or infamous charm as he calls it in his head, could not save him. He admits to having spent time in jail for other crimes, but he claims he loved Zona. He repeatedly denies evidence against him, but doesn't have evidence like against it. He just is like, well, no, that's not true.
Yeah. It's okay, then what?
Yeah.
Explain yourself. Where were you?
From the moment he was first arrested, Edward was adamant that all the prosecution had against him was circumstantial evidence, which technically he was correct because there was no one who could place him at the crime scene. There was not, it's 1897, there's not much forensic evidence. Mm-hmm. But he didn't come off well in front of the jury.
On July 1st, 1897, the jury deliberates for only about an hour before finding Edward Shue guilty of murder in the first degree. 10 out of the 12 people on the jury wanted the death penalty, but because in the end 2 of the people couldn't be swayed, Edward was sentenced to life in prison instead of the death penalty, and he was hauled through town in chains, making this the first and only known case in U.S. legal history where the testimony of a ghost led to a murder conviction.
I mean, how could you not love this story? It is so cool.
We're not lawyers. Do you learn about this in law school?
I hope so. But there is more to the story. So basically, Edward is sent to prison, but people are really, really upset. 10 out of 12 people on the jury wanted the death penalty.
Yeah.
That probably reflects the community as well. People are upset. They felt cheated that he wasn't given the death penalty. And what do you do in 1897? You gather a group of angry men.
With your pitchforks.
Your
torches.
And you try to take justice into your own hands. And that is exactly what happened 10 days after the trial. On July 11th, 1897, a group of around 30 angry men decided to take matters into their own hands. They marched through town, waving around revolvers, torches, and lengths of rope. And the sheriff and deputy get word of this. They run to the jail to protect Edward. The deputy gets him out of his cell before the mob arrives. And when the crowd arrives, they're furious. They're like, you guys are protecting this MFer? This SOB? They're furious. And now the sheriff is like facing 30 furious farmers with like rifles. He makes the first move. He draws his gun, points it at the nearest member of the mob.
But before he fires, he recognizes one of the guys as his neighbors. So he cannot bring himself to kill his friend. So he holsters his weapon. He gives a passionate speech to the crowd instead. And he basically convinces the mob to disperse. 4 people are indicted with the attempted lynching, but no lives are lost. Edward Shue ended up serving 3 years in prison. But no, he did not get out. He died of pneumonia in 1900.
Goodbye, Edward.
Yeah. He had an everlasting faint in jail.
I don't think he even deserves as beautiful as a death as that.
Right.
That's not for him. That's for us mothers.
That's for us. That's for the girls.
That's for the mommies. I know. I love this story. We first talked about it on Two Girls One Ghost back in 2017 when we started the podcast, like early days, and it blew our minds.
Right.
And we think about it all the time.
Because like this is what you hope. And I feel like there's so many times where like there's these wild unsolved true crime cases or missing persons, disappearances, and people will often like look to psychics and try to get
yeah.
answers. And it's like, why can't the dead just come and tell us what happened to them?
I
Why
know.
can't we get the answers this way? And this is a case where we do.
Right. And I think there's a lot of reasons why some people don't believe in the paranormal, but I think if I were a skeptic, I think that would be an argument I would say is like, well, if ghosts are real, why aren't they coming back from the dead and solving their murders all the time? Right? But we still believe in ghosts. We just don't know the rules that they have to follow.
Right. And we don't know if like things are just great. And it was Zona herself that was like, actually, I need to take a beat because I've got some business to take care of.
Got some biz. Yeah.
Right.
Some people might say that we'll never really know for sure whether Mary Jane really did see her daughter's ghosts, but we absolutely believe she did. And either way, her story has lived on for generations. She's now known as the Greenbrier ghost. She even has a plaque in Greenbrier, West Virginia. And Edward Shue's trial marked the first time a paranormal testimony was used as evidence in a court of law. And the appearance of Zona's spirit became local legend. Just like she did on the stand, Mary Jane stuck to her story her entire life. And not everyone in town believed her, but her tale has lived on. And it inspired several popular stage plays and books, including a play called Zona and a musical adaptation called The Greenbrier Ghost, which I want to see. But both of these had runs at the Greenbrier Valley Theater, showing how deeply this story is woven into the area's history. It's not hard to see why people are so interested in this case. I mean, we're obsessed with it. And at the end of the day, whether or not Mary Jane really did see her daughter's ghost, Mary Jane's story got a guilty man locked up. She was able to avenge her daughter and honor her memory.
Yeah, she did. And despite some of the sensational press about the trial, the truth is that there was clear evidence that Zona was murdered.
Right.
It wasn't just based on a ghost story, which makes this a rare case where both scientific and paranormal evidence came together. And because of that, a murderer was brought to justice.
Hell yeah, mommies. And that is the Greenbrier Ghost Zona Heaster Shue episode.
Thank you so much for listening. We loved this topic. We are your hosts, Sabrina, Deana-Roga, and Corinne, Vien. Join us next Tuesday for another peek inside another crimes of the paranormal. And if there are any cases that you would like us to cover, please let us know in the comments. Here at Crime House, we want to thank each and every one of you for your support. If you like what you heard today, reach out on all social media at Crime House. Don't forget to rate, review, and follow Crimes of wherever you get your podcasts. Your feedback truly makes a difference.
Bye, mommies. We love you.
Bye, mommies. To catch every terrifying moment, subscribe to @Crimehouse Studios on YouTube.
Because this time, you're not just watching the horror, you're understanding it.